Last week, the pitfalls we talked about were pretty much about us as a hunter, our techniques, strategies, thoughts, and practice habits. This week, your coaches are back in the house for the third and final part of the series. Tonight, we look at the mistakes we feel a lot of first-time elk hunters make in the area of equipment, calling, and scouting. Now, don't you worry. This series might be over, but I'm plenty sure we'll be making plenty more mistakes down the line just so we can help you guys out in the future. Tonight, we wrap it all up. The first-time elk hunter mistakes and pitfalls. Those topics along with our ElkBros shout-outs. And tonight, our EBD segment. So, my friends, pull up a chair and adjust your volumes just right, and welcome to Blue Collar Elk Hunting.
Welcome to Blue Collar Elk Hunting, brought to you by ElkBros.com, with your hosts Gilbert Ornelas and elk hunting coach Joe Gilliam. You want to hunt elk, and they live to hunt elk. Their goal is to share with you what they have learned grinding it out for over 35 seasons, doing what they love. So come on into camp and set a spell. Welcome to Blue Collar Elk Hunters.
Hello again, everyone. If it's your first time with us, glad to have you. Hope you enjoy our show. And for those blue collar hunters following our show and grinding it out with us every week, welcome back to Elk Camp. I'm Gilbert Ornelas coming to you from Spring, Texas, and from New Mexico, your elk hunting coach, Joe Gillia. And I think we got the Venezuelan Mafia in the house, too, from Katy, Texas, Mr. Luis Gonzalez. What's up, boys?
Hey. Yeah, that reminds me. So since you brought up, I'm going to hit this first, the Venezuelan Mafia. I get a letter from Richard Strait from Lincoln, Nebraska, and he's all, someday you guys need to give some history on the Venezuelan Mafia.
It may be a long story.
and he was like, maybe it's a subject for one of them Ornelas Unleashed.
Oh man,
well,
I think
we could get there.
The Unleashed is needed for sure.
Well, just so that I'm going to put one thing out there, and so I don't harp on this too long. I got a little housekeeping to do, but sure. I just want our listeners to know that when I first met Luis, we're going on our 5th season together. So it was a little over 4 years ago, coming into elk camp, and this guy just blew me away. I mean, just his whole attitude, how much he loved being out there. It didn't matter what was going on with the elk. It was just the total experience. And I knew right then that was somebody I could spend some time with. And in fact, you remember he had that doggone machete. He brought a machete, brand new. And
a Venezuelan's got to have a machete, dude. That's
especially the Mafia, right? And
that's right. Nickname Machete.
Do you remember that, Gilbert? Every time I would stop, and he's like, is something in the way? Do I need to get my machete?
Get my machete out.
You guys didn't believe in the power of the machete, dude. The machete.
Look, man, I like a machete, but I don't like a dull one, man. You got to have one that's sharp.
Dude, this one was able to break the knee of an elk when we were actually skinning it. So,
he was like a little kid,
it's not going to cut it.
He's like a little kid. I tell him, no, it's all right, dude. It's all right. I mean, I don't know him from Adam at this point. I'm like, no, dude, it's okay, man. His little lip would come out like that.
Not true.
And then there was that spot where your trailer couldn't get by that bush that was out there. And I said, hey, Luis, why don't you get that machete? Oh my gosh, man. He was like so
like a rat on a Cheeto,
I got this.
brother.
I got this, guys.
I tell you, he'd have been with a big old pine tree this big around. Luis, we need the machete. Got you, babe.
Got the job done. Got the job done.
But the thing that I wanted to say is because at this point we don't know Manano, right? And Luis is hunting with us, and in the evenings and stuff, he'd go over and be making phone calls. And he'd go over and be making a phone call, and I was like, man, that's pretty cool, man. This guy's calling his wife, and he's talking to his wife and everything like that. And come to find out, he's talking to a dude named Manano.
Exactly.
Right? And I was like, oh man, these guys are like best friends. These guys got to be really, really tight. Well, then Manano
just making him jealous.
And then Manano comes to camp with them, and I was like, so this is the first time I meet Manano, and then they come in there, man. These guys are like
Laurel and Hardy, dude. The Odd Couple.
Arguing back and forth about this and that and yelling and talking, calling each other names. I was like, oh, dude, I guess he brought somebody else with him.
That's just the way we express our love.
Look,
Wouldn't
man,
have it any other way.
I'm going to tell you about Latinos, dude. My grandfather was a straight up redneck boy. God rest his soul. But he went over to my dad. My dad's from Monterrey, Mexico. He went over to my dad's house, and them two brothers got outside cussing one another. And then the dad got in the middle of it, my grandfather. Mario Davila, and they got into it and started hollering at one another. And my grandpa said, I tell you one damn thing. If they talk to me like that, I'm whooping somebody's ass. He said, I ain't taking all that. He said, that's horrible when they talk to one another, man. Get up in each other's face and point their fingers and everything.
Dude, I had just shot an elk. And they're behind me. I'm like, the animal's still right around. They're behind me arguing about where the shot hit. And I'm like, whoa, dude, be quiet, man.
Oh, dude.
We became the entertainment at elk.
100%, man.
Oh, yeah.
The food and entertainment.
Oh, man, we get it all.
And the entertainment.
So we're definitely going to have to talk more about the mafia and that relationship, because it's just. I
remember one thing you said, Joe, when that trip in, his first trip in was really tough. I got scars on my vehicle to show it. So at the end of the day, we got in there, and I mean, when we got to camp, he slammed the door and he told Joe, he said, Joe, I don't care if we ever see an elk. The adventure we've had getting in here was well worth the wait. And I'm like, he's like, Gilbert, you gonna go hunting in the morning? I'm like, heck no, man. It's like 1 a.m. I'm going to bed, cuz. I said, it's gonna be rough. If you do this tomorrow, it's gonna be rough because you ain't acclimated. But I'm gonna tell you, he wouldn't have missed it for the world. He got up, went out, and now he knows next time you go to sleep.
I did learn my lesson.
Good, man. Some housekeeping things for our listeners out there. Y'all, we want to tell you, we get a lot of letters, and let me tell you, if you send a letter to Gilbert, it's just Gilbert at ElkBros.com. Luis is Luis at ElkBros.com. I don't know if he's figured out how to set his up yet or not. But
he has not.
Chab is Chab at ElkBros.com, and I'm just Joe at ElkBros.com. And we get a lot of letters, and let me tell you what, we answer them all. So, look, if you sent a question, comment, or joined our elk camp, or if you're a Patreon, if you came in and you became one of our patrons on our Patreon page, I have emailed all of you thank yous and comments and welcome letters. And if you have not gotten it, please be sure to go and check your spam and make sure that you're getting things from the ElkBros.com domain. For some reason, if you have Gmail or something, anything like that, for sometimes it'll just spam that. And, Gilbert, I thought I was done with spam, bro, and it just keeps pulling me back in.
Yeah, I know it.
So that's pretty much what I want to say. So you guys make sure that you're getting our emails. If you have emailed us and you did not get something back, please check on that, or email us again at our elkbros.com so that your email will accept it. All right?
Yeah. Always, guys, thank you for all that you're doing for us. But please rate, subscribe, review us on Apple Podcasts and YouTube. If you have any other questions, please send them into info@elkbros.com. We'll get you up here and get you talked about for sure. Make you famous, baby.
I don't know about that, but we'll be talking to them for sure.
Right.
Give us feedback. It only helps us grow.
That's right. Well, guys, you know what time it is. It's time for the ElkBros shout out. These are just shout outs to a few cities with the most listeners topping our charts this week, Joe.
Yep, up first on our list. Yeah, it's one of those days already, man. This Pennsylvania borough at the end of Pittsburgh's Penn Street is the birthplace of, and I don't know if you guys remember when you were in school this, and I don't even know if y'all read magazines, but it was a birthplace of Scholastic magazine that was established in 1920 as a newsletter for high school students. It later became Scholastic Publishing, publisher of the wildly popular Harry Potter books, right here in Wilkinsburg, Pennsylvania, topping our charts this week.
Awesome, man. I hear that elk herd keeps growing up there too, Joe. Pennsylvania and Kentucky, boy. I hear it's growing.
Yeah, we talk about that a lot, and I mean, if you're in Pennsylvania, some of you guys send us some stories. We'd love to hear about it.
No doubt. Send us some pictures of them big old farm elk that y'all are growing down there. I'm telling you, I've seen a few. It's pretty cool. Joe, next up, known as Titletown and toilet paper capital of the world, the first splinter-free toilet paper was produced here, and there is no way you can hear this city's name without thinking about football. There's the smallest city that hosts the National Football League's team. Founded in 1919, their 13-time national champions are the only NFL team to be owned by its fans.
The only one.
Green Bay, Wisconsin.
Green Bay, Wisconsin.
The
man.
cheeseheads in the house.
And you know what? I gotta love Green Bay, and I love football, Gilbert.
Me too.
I love football, but buddy, to not get a splinter in my butt when I'm using toilet paper.
Lord have mercy.
I think
toilet paper. Wow.
Joe, your wisdom, it just continues to surprise me. The way you paired up toilet paper with Gilbert. And,
that's for Unleashed, baby.
Yeah, and the man pawn.
Oh my gosh. Here we go. Luis, you're up next.
All right, man. How about my singing skills here? Take me out to the ball game.
So
this
we just lost all of our listeners.
Hey, or you may have gained a ton. So this song, if everybody's familiar with it, it was written here. This is the first marketed sliced white bread, Wonder Bread, was actually born here. And the largest NFL stadium in the country, Lucas Oil Stadium, resides here too. Oh, and let's not forget the Speedway, which is the largest sporting facility in the world. Indianapolis, Indiana.
Indianapolis in the house. Indiana, fellas, man. Thanks for listening.
Indianapolis, Indiana in the house.
Yeah, they say
no
that
doubt.
you can
Next up, Joe. Go ahead, buddy.
I'm just saying, they were talking about that, the Speedway there. They're talking about how you could take all of those largest facilities around and put them together, and they would fit inside that Speedway. It's huge.
Inside of Indianapolis?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Wow. I've never been. I've always wanted to go to one of them. I've been to a couple NASCAR events, but never been to the Indianapolis Speedway.
Yeah, I'm kind of the black sheep of the family out of North Carolina because I'm not this huge NASCAR fan. They're wondering if I missed a gene somewhere.
You were born without that NASCAR redneck gene. You got the rest of them, but left the NASCAR back.
I guess so, man.
Next up, Joe, named for the Luna family that owned the land grant where the village is located. This is the home of their beloved Tigers, and now also home to Facebook's newest billion-dollar data center, a 2.8 million square foot campus that will contain a total of 22 data halls, of servers and related equipment in Los Lunas, New Mexico.
Las Lunas.
Oh, I was going to say, yeah, it's got to be Las Lunas.
It has to be Las.
Right?
Right? Yeah, for sure.
Las Lunas.
Las Lunas, New Mexico.
Yeah. Home of the Tigers, man. Las Lunas. Big shout out to all you guys there. Big shout out to my New Mexico brothers and sisters down in Las Lunas, just south of Albuquerque down there. You've got Valencia, Berlin close by to that. And for Facebook to have selected Las Lunas to put that data center was just huge for New Mexico and huge for that community, man. It's
Boost
just
up in the economy for sure. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, definitely, man. Okay, last but not least is the youngest city in Nebraska. We're always talking about old stuff, old this, old that, back in the day. At only 52, it's younger than many of its residents. The sweeping view of the floodplain here led to the city's name, which means the view in Spanish. But here, guys, is really the interesting story. This is how the city began. A developer named Decker built 335 homes on 80 acres here in 1959. Each of these homes were referred to as the House of Nines because they sold at the time for $9,999 in 1959. A person could buy one for $200 down and $99 a month. But if you didn't have $200, they'd work it out with you so you could also paint the interior of your newly constructed home any color instead of having to make the down payment.
Wow.
So, but here's the catch. The homes were uninsulated, so they were cold in the winter, hot in the summer. Some had no furnaces, and air conditioning was a luxury, y'all. But that started this whole place in La Vista, Nebraska.
La Vista, Nebraska.
Yep.
Wow.
Cool story, man.
Isn't that cool?
Homes for $9,999.
Oh man, put me in, boss.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
I'll take two.
No kidding.
Spend
man.
the rest in blankets.
Yeah, no doubt. Send the rest in
Well,
blankets.
you figure, okay, all right, 9,999. No, that's 1959. You know,
That's a lot of cash.
That's
It's
still
like
a chunk of
$100,000
change,
now.
but
Yep.
you know, I mean, shoot, I'm plugging it into the wall and shooting that puppy full if I have to, man. So
Yes, sir.
It's a great story.
No doubt.
Yep.
All right, guys, time for our main topic. Let's dive in. The first two parts of the series have been blowing up, brother.
Yeah, most definitely. I'm really, really pleased at the amount of listens that these have been getting. I mean, the downloads and people hammering this are typical of in season, like when we're in the actual hunting season when people are listening. So that means there's a lot of people out there that are really trying to pick up everything they can, soak it all in, and trying to flatten that learning curve. So good for y'all out there, man. We're glad to see that, and we're going to try to give you a little bit more information. I tell you, one of the huge things, Luis, has been the fact that it's helped so much to have our resident greenhorn here, because just the questions and when we start getting into actual situations, and when you bring up something, you're like, I didn't get this or why this, that's huge, because there's so much that we take for granted after doing it. It almost becomes, just normal to us. So people have really enjoyed that. So that's been a huge plus.
Awesome. No, thanks. I love participating, and it's hard because as I'm doing the podcast, I'm learning and listening from you guys, and so it's an honor, and I'll continue to try to ask the questions because I still have questions every day when I listen to you guys. And
the first area, man, you actually inspired this. You and Manano inspired this,
man,
because
it's 100% true though.
I broke these down into some areas, and I broke them down into equipment. And these are common mistakes or pitfalls people make with equipment, calling, and then scouting. And we're going to talk about each of those. But the first thing I put in the equipment, man, was I think it's so that most guys, when they come out, they carry way too much gear and way too much weight.
I've never done that. I don't know what you're talking about.
Gilbert, I went to go pick up those guys' pack one time, man, and pulled my back out, man. I was like, what the? I think they were carrying.
Well, that's an age thing. So let's not just, let's just.
They started to sit back, and one rolled backwards. I mean, they couldn't even counter the weight. It is just incredible.
Joe,
you're absolutely not right, Joe. That's one of my biggest issues, and I am terrible at trying to keep my back my pack light. I'm terrible at it because I just look at everything in it and I was like, yeah, I'm potentially going to need this. I'm potentially going to need that. And look, the truth of the matter is 9 times out of 10, I don't. And that's why you guys are probably best to talk about this. But yes, this is a huge mistake when you're out on the woods, walking the amount of ground that we cover, 10 to 12 miles, up to 15 miles a day. You're going up and down the hills. Look, I'm a flatlander, right? I go up in the mountains, 8,000 feet of altitude. My oxygen, my lungs are not working the same. And to be that heavy and on top of that, carrying your bow, it's not easy. It's hard and it wears you out.
It's like carrying another person, man.
Quick, yeah. Manano gives me crap about this all the time, and I hope he doesn't listen to this podcast. But this is really actually the only time he's actually right.
Yeah. Well, it pained him to say that, guys. I'm gonna tell you that straight up. You know, the first time I felt his pack, I was like, dude, what do you have in there? I'm like, I don't understand. Well, I got this and I got that, and I'm like, leave all that here, man. Joe's got all of that. You know, if Joe's guiding you, he's got everything you're going to need. And at the end of the day, I mean, I could understand having a few more things if you are solo or if you're guiding or something like that.
Right,
man, when you're with a guide, he's got 90% of everything you're going to need.
Or even with a partner, man, you guys can actually talk about who's going to carry what and kind of
food, water, food, and water. Okay.
And for Gilbert, in that order.
Yeah, man, absolutely. 100%. And you know, a cleaning pack where you know, everybody's going to be successful here. We're going to knock us an elk down.
Sure.
We're going to have a cleaning pack. And then look, man, nature calls. So again, got to have you some baby wipes with you. That stuff will set you free.
But Joe, your pack is super light, man. And, you know, and you always seem to have the essentials. So, I mean, I'd love to hear from the both of you.
His pack ain't light, bro. Yeah. Who you trying to fool, man? I don't know.
His pack is lighter than mine for sure. That's easy to do.
But you got 3 clips of a 10 millimeter and all kinds of stuff with you, man.
Yeah, and that's one thing.
Spray.
When they walk, they jingle, man. It's like this stuff swinging. Yeah, there was a movie about one of those guys going out into the woods. I can't remember what the name of that was, and with John Candy or something like that, going out into the woods, and just kind of reminded me of that. But you do some of the stuff that a lot of guys do is they become gadget guys. You know, they see these things and, oh yeah, man, that would be really great. And, you know, I need my survival knife, and, you know, and I need my flint in case, you know, I need to make a fire, and Bear Grylls has this, and those other guys walking barefoot have that. And,
I do have a great lighter though.
Yeah.
Hope you got your money back.
Yeah. You know, these guys were out with them doggone $40 jet lighters, and they pulled it out, and those things it wouldn't even light, bro. It was like, so Manano pulls this out. Oh, let me show you like that, and he goes, his doesn't light. And I said, I pulled out my little 99-cent Bic lighter. So yeah,
and I changed lighters after that.
Yeah.
But you got a whole pack of them in your bag, bro.
Gotta have a backup.
You know, it's a common thing. I mean, half the fun is the preparing for the hunt.
Doubt,
I mean, that's a big part of it, and
but
everything
less is more,
have.
Man.
Yeah,
I'm gonna tell you, guys, less is more. I mean, you're hunting. Some guys like to have binoculars and stuff like that. For me, I don't need them unless I'm guiding, or if I'm hunting with a buddy and he's up. You know, I mean, we have those talks too. Who's up? You know, who's the guy in the front line, right? I mean, we rotate out. You know, especially if we're working with each other. So, you know, and like you said, Joe, have that talk before y'all leave camp. Hey, what you bring in? Those kind of things. That way, y'all don't have to be, you know, going in heavy. We want to come out.
Because that's right. You want to come out heavy, and
exactly.
and the thing that you have to remember is when you are coming out heavy, you got to carry that crap as well. You got to do the animal plus your pack and all of that stuff. So,
one thing I would tell guys is to put that stuff in your UTV. That way you have it accessible. It's at least where you're going to be, or your vehicle or whatever. Carry you a box in your UTV that's got all that stuff in it, that if you need it, you can make a short trek. Sometimes it's a long trek back, but at least you got it accessible.
Sure.
Well, and a lot of guys aren't even, it depends on what they're using as their mode, as far as that goes. But, food and water, y'all, I don't like to carry water bottles. I like to carry a water system, hydration system, put a liter, maybe a liter and a half in there. I'm different because I'm from the hills. For you guys, you got to have a little bit more water. I would say if you're going to carry extra weight in anything, carry it in water, because food and water lighten as you go. So that's something that's going to disappear, man, and it's going to run through you. So it's going to happen. So I tell you to have your nutrition, have your water. And, the reason you got to be careful about weight is because weight plus high altitude equals tired legs, which tired body, and that makes a tired mind. And that's when you start making mistakes and you start losing focus and you start getting in that. I mean, if it's day 4, day 5, you start getting that negative attitude, and that all ties back to it, man. So, and a lot, I see guys, carrying big giant knives with them, man. And I can usually tell somebody has a lot of experience hunting because or hunting elk because of the size of knife they carry. I mean, they've got something that's going to be able to get up inside a cavity, that's going to be light, that's going to be sharp. And even if they got to carry 3 of them, they can have 3 knives to one big knife on there. So I like to carry a little tiny light sharpener that you can use. Your kill kit doesn't weigh anything. Toilet paper doesn't weigh anything. There's a lot of stuff now you start carrying, and there's guys in a lot of those Western states that, they're carrying a pistol or something like that. That's, that adds a little bit of weight. I don't know how much. I don't carry one.
I regret it. I left it back at camp after the first day.
Yeah. And I mean, because I'm in front of you, so as long as you run faster than me, then you're in good shape.
I got a Chav with me, bro. Chav can run off any bear that's alive. See that straight up, bro. Hey, they don't want no part of Chav.
Well, and there's some places where there's grizzly bears. That's a whole different thing. I guarantee you, Luis would not have dropped that gun after day 1 in grizzly country. But
no, sir.
Exactly. It'd be with me. Yeah. I'd endure carrying it.
Yeah.
Because I'd rather to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it.
Out here in New Mexico, it's a little bit different, and a lot of
the
those
big raccoons.
And anyway, so that's one of the things that I think a lot of guys, they make a huge mistake on. Putting way too much. Layer up in the morning. Whatever you're going to wear in the morning, I guarantee you before you leave out, you can take off 1 layer before you start, because once your body warms up, that first one's coming off. And, so just wear your layers so that you can put them on the pack. That's all you're going to need to layer back up. Manano, actually, he has a piece of gear that I had never carried before that I carry now religiously. I love it, and it does not add any weight, and that's that hammock. Yeah, that extreme lightweight hammock, and it's just super for out in the woods, man, when you take those midday naps and to get off the ground and stuff. So
I love it.
But I think that's if you guys are listening and you have all these gadgets and gear,
It's good if he brings one for everybody. Next time I wake up and somebody's hanging in a hammock, I'm cutting it down. I'm bringing my sharp knife.
Hey, Beto, it's got a weight restriction, bro.
That's all right, partner. I guarantee I done sat in that thing before. I'll be a lot lighter when I get to elk camp. Especially after spending 10 days with you, son gun.
But I got to say something, though. There is a high level of pleasure when Manano needs something in the woods and I have it. And
there's no doubt.
And so the listeners know I keep a list out in the woods. And every time Manano asks me for something, I write it down, and he absolutely hates it.
Of course.
So imagine, it takes him everything he has to be able to say, okay, Luis, can I please borrow your knife? Or can I please borrow your this?
You got to be real uncomfortable, man.
You could tell that he suffers when he does that, and I enjoy it so much. So anyway.
So I would say Manano's almost a minimalist. I mean, he is. You know, he would rather do without and have, you know, just the things that he needs. But sometimes I think that's not a bad way to lean, as long as you're doing it so that you have what you need to get back to camp, to, you know, to take care of your animal and take care of yourself, you know. So that's pretty much on the equipment there. Except for there's one thing that we have talked about before, and I'm really huge on two things: finding and eliminating possible failure points. And one of our goals is, and we got t-shirts coming out that says this, 2 holes. That is our goal, to take that animal and place that shot in the best location possible, get a pass through, and drop that animal as quick as possible. 2 holes, man. So, and I think one mistake that happens from new hunters that come out here is they come out to hunt elk. Now, deer, other animals, other critters, I think they're great for it. But for elk, I highly recommend not using mechanical broadheads. We don't have them in our camp. And we're telling you this because one of our bros, man, and we've talked about it on other podcasts, you probably heard it, but, you know, a mechanical broadhead there's 2 things. It can fail, and it does what it's designed to do, which is to go inside an animal and open up. And when you talk about a big, strong animal like an elk, that means that there's a good chance you're not going to get 2 holes, because sometimes it's hard to get 2 holes with fixed blades.
Oh, no doubt. You know, Joe, you hit the nail on the head with that. I want guys to understand something. Are there elk taken with mechanical broadheads?
Yes, there are.
Absolutely. But let me tell you something about most of those guys that are shooting mechanical heads at bull elk are shooting bows that have kinetic energy capabilities above 80 pounds, right? And when I talk about 75 to 90 pound kinetic energy opportunities, that's, you know, you hunt Cape buffalo with that, right? So at the end of the day, you got to understand your capabilities. If you're shooting a 60 pound bow and you're not, you know, a 28 inch draw, 27 inch draw, you don't have the KE that it takes to punch a mechanical broadhead all the way through a bull elk, much less even a fixed blade. But at the end of the day, you're severely hamstrung about penetration. And no doubt we want 2 holes, but we want both lungs.
Right.
And if we get both lungs, we're going to kill him. I don't care if you poke another hole in it, you're going to get him, right?
Right.
At the end of the day, just most guys don't shoot the kind of equipment that it takes to shoot a mechanical broadhead. And I've been experimenting with them all year. I shot several pigs and I shot a deer this year with a mechanical head. Flawless. I mean, absolutely flawless. Killed them quick. I mean, it opened a big hole up in them. But when I shot the pig ran off with my broadhead and my bow. It did not go all the way through, right? With my arrow. So I'm telling you, a pig's a litmus test for me. If you can't blow through a hog with it, you're not going to blow through an elk, I promise you.
Well, and people have to remember the 2 holes is not only to put that animal down and to put it down as quick as possible, but it's also for tracking purposes, right? To ensure that you're able to recover that animal. If I have 2 holes, then I've got blood coming out someplace that's going to help me a ton. If I end up with 1 hole and somehow that hole gets sealed up or that arrow stays in, now recovery now gets harder. And our goal again is we want to recover that animal, and that's one of our big deals.
And I've seen it firsthand. You know, what happened to Chav. And I felt horrible. I mean, it opened up prematurely and
Hit a twig and opened up prematurely. Yep.
Didn't even get in the chest cavity. Got about 2 inches of penetration. And I mean, it was in the pocket, Jack. I'm talking, if he's shooting any kind of punch cut or fixed blade, he's going to get at least one lung, maybe both of them for sure. It's in the pocket. You know, when I seen the arrow hanging out, I thought it was hanging out on the opposite side. And then I got to thinking about the math in my head, and I went, ooh, man, that's the side he shot him on. That's not good.
Right.
So, and then that's what happened. It hit that little limb and opened up prematurely.
A big philosophy of mine is keep things simple.
Yeah.
The more that you keep it simple, the less there is to go wrong. And it's just something that I have seen with these animals. I've been around it too much, and I've seen too many of the other type of hits. So
when the bull he killed last year or the year before, he blew right through him with that fixed blade broadhead I gave him. So,
as a new hunter, bow hunter coming in, that was one of my biggest questions is, okay, so broadhead, fixed broadhead, mechanical broadhead, what are the benefits of one, the advantages of the other, you know, pros and cons. And so did a lot of looking online and trying to figure out, okay, where are we with this? Because there is a big debate in the industry too, as far as what people, you know, people swear by one type and the other people swear by the other. And I think it's a pretty 50-50 split as of where it stands now. And now they have the hybrid ones, which is partially fixed and then, you know, partially mechanical.
Right.
But, you know, I think to sum up what you both said, you know, and the way I kind of looked at it was, look, the mechanical has the potential failure of opening up prior to hitting the animal, which is going to make it terrible for when it hits the animal. It's not going to have the penetration necessary. It also, to me, loses momentum once it enters and opens up.
Correct.
You bet.
So those are the two things I see negative with the mechanical. With the fixed, with the positive with the mechanical is it flies a lot better because it has, you know, it behaves more like a field point. But that is if you always practice with a field point. So if you practice with your fixed broadheads, then you don't have to worry about it flying differently.
How many times you ever seen me shoot with a field point?
Never. And that's why I bring it up, right? So, and then the other advantage of the mechanical is that, yes, you get more cutting area because you have the ability to expand once it gets in and it cuts more. But if you don't have the two holes like you guys are saying, then that blood is just limited to coming out of just one hole and not maybe all the way through from one side to the other in the animal. So, you know, everything you guys are saying, to me, it's summed up to shot placement, practice with your fixed broadheads, and ensure that you have that, you know, a shot placement to where you can actually get the two holes for a better tracking job. So.
Yep. Find possible failure points and eliminate them.
Agreed.
You know, that's just
Agreed.
where.
And I'm, you know, guys, this is a subject that'll be debated till the cows come home.
Oh yeah,
but
sure.
I'm just giving my personal experience and experiences that I've had. Look, I'm not one to shun any kind of new technology or anything like that. I work in an industry where it's driven by technology, right?
Sure.
So when I see something new pop out, like I saw the new Muzzy hybrid pop out this year, I went and bought me 3 of them. And I went and shot them at some pigs and deer and stuff. I wanted to see how they fly great. They opened fine. They didn't have any issues. Would I take them elk hunting with me? No, I wouldn't. Because I kill every elk I shoot at with what I'm doing right now, and it works. You know, it's a proven performer, just like you, Joe. Why would you want to shoot anything else other than the equipment that you've been shooting? I mean, you're 30 some odd years and rolling it. I tell everybody, if you want to kill an elk with a bow and arrow, shoot a wasp broadhead. That it works. I mean, I got a guy that I know that's killed 30 some odd bulls with a dadgum wasp broadhead. How do you not understand it? But look, I mean, you shoot a very powerful bow, you draw an extreme amount of weight so you could punch that thing through there. A guy that's shooting 52 pounds probably can't get that punch cut to work as well as you can. So it's really about your setup, you know, and do your homework on your setup.
Right. And like I said, you know, I'm not telling people not to use mechanicals. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying do what you do with your deer and all those other critters. But on this one, I'm just telling you, if as a coach, if I want to make sure that my athlete's going to go out there and perform to the best of their ability and I don't have to worry about failure of equipment, that's how I do it.
Me
Let's
too.
go to the next area is going to be on calling. And when I think about that,
I'm an expert here.
When
Here we go.
I think the biggest mistake is a lot of people, they get this idea in their head that you go out and call. If there's an animal in the area, they answer you. And it doesn't always happen that way.
How many times we walked up on a bull, Joe, and we called to him, he didn't even lift his head.
Well, or he ain't saying a word and he's coming in.
Exactly.
And that's the thing that I want people to understand is just because you don't hear elk does not mean that they're not responding. They can respond in a lot of ways, man. I mean, a bull early on, because we do hunt a lot of early season. A lot of those guys, when they hear that and they're bachelored up and stuff, or they're starting to rub and they're starting to display, they might be coming into you quiet, coming in. They could be thrashing on a tree, or especially early, you might get a little, just like that. And it's not that loud pitch bugle. You might get a bow call, which is a bull making a cow call, and it doesn't carry as far. So
there was one time one made a sound, it sounded like a monkey. You remember? I told you, like, no, man, but it sounded like a monkey. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's him. That's that chuckle, buddy.
Yeah, and a lot of them do that a little bit differently. Some will just do like a 3-time chuckle. One will just kind of chuckle a couple times, and someone will give that little gorilla chuckle, there. And
best thing ever happened to me. I got into a chuckle off with about 3 bulls in a big park, and I mean, we went at it for about 25 minutes. It was the most awesome thing I've ever done in my life. I actually got better doing it because I had them responding to me the whole time, and they were not happy with me because I was imitating every chuckle. They would go right back. I mean, it was cool. Chav got to see that.
Well, what I'm telling guys is okay. It's okay to go out there and to call and to do that stuff and try to get a response, because half the battle of killing an elk is finding an elk, right? And
100.
So, when they give a bugle back to you, or they chuckle back to you, or they give a call back to you, that's great, because now you got something located. Now you're in business. But what I'm trying to tell you is if you're moving along and you're calling and you don't get a response, a lot of guys are like, well, there's no elk in the woods. And a lot of these people are not paying attention, number one, to the ground, to the sign. They're not paying attention to the smell with their nose. And I'll tell you, elk have a very distinct smell. It's something that I really like. It's something that it smells really good to me.
I like a musky flavor or something, or smell.
Early on in the season, they have almost like a licorice musky smell. And then it becomes a little bit more stronger musky smell. It can get real close to cattle urine at times. If you ever smelled cattle urine, for those of you that haven't, go find you a cow and smell you some urine. And it's pretty doggone close to that. But I think a lot of guys don't pay attention to what's going on around them. They just figure, okay, I've seen people call in. I got to go call. If they're not answering, there's not an elk. And that's a huge mistake. It's a huge mistake, because one of my favorite techniques early season, and you've been with me, Luis, man, when we just going through an area that I know is a transition corridor, just cow calling every now and then, moving slowly, and we've had bulls come in silently to us, right? And my directions to the guys that are with me, because we were in a group of 3, is my directions are, all right, I'm looking to the front when I'm cow calling. I want you guys looking off to the sides when we're moving, because they're going to try coming in from the sides, man, when they catch up to us, because elk move in their own time. They move in elk time. They don't move in human time. So if you are in a situation where you're not hearing a lot of bugling and you slow down, you just do some cow calling as a technique to sound like a group of elk moving through a feed area. It might take some time for some of those satellites and stuff to move into you, but just because they're not responding, don't think that they're not there necessarily.
That's right.
Pay attention to other things. I think another mistake is that most people only think that you have to call at or challenge a bull. All right. It's always a conversation where you're trying to engage that animal. And they don't realize that probably one of the most effective calling techniques is in representing your own gathering, telling a story, creating the illusion of an elk rut parade happening in another place, man. In other words, you kind of like, it's kind of like that clique in high school, man. When people talk to you, you're kind of yeah, like that. But when they start ignoring you, you're like wanting to know what's going on over there. And you do that. You just kind of act like they are non-existent and like you have your own thing going on. And it is a huge, successful technique to do that. You will have elk. Look, if you challenge at a bull, most of the time these animals are going to circle because you're challenging. They're going to circle to that downwind side and they're going to try to scent check and they're going to try to see what's going on. You can get an elk who does not like to go uphill, that is coming from a distance, to come in straight at you, to go up a hill when they think that they're having to get in on a party they're missing out on.
Mm-hmm.
And makes sense.
Yeah.
Seen it happen.
Quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Both techniques used at the right time. If you see a bull with that he's got his own cow and he's interested and he's pushing away because he's worried about you coming and taking his cows, well, forget that, man. Start having your own. And I don't know if you guys have ever had the pleasure or remember it happening, but I think, Luis, you've been with me on an episode where you will hear some bulls cranking off to one side. And Gilbert, I know you've been with me when we've heard this. Yeah. And then you'll hear another group off, and then you hear another group, and it seems like they converge.
Oh yeah, perfect storm.
Yeah. Yep. Because it's almost like a gathering that ends up happening. That each group knows that they have their own cows and that that bull is protecting his group, and it's not the same threatening. They're all going to the same water or they're all going to the same feed area, and
that happened the very first trip with you and I and Tucker were together going up that hill, and that's the day that they gather at the top, and that's where Chav and Gilbert were. We heard them in different areas, and they just kind of were congregating, gathering to the very top. So yeah, exactly what you just said.
Yeah, it's different. I mean, just think about it this way: if you're out with your date, somebody that you just started dating, and you have another guy and his date come over and start talking to you, that's not very threatening. But man, you see three guys standing over on the side of the wall over there, and it's like, what are you looking at? You kind of start moving out of the area there. So it's just something that I want guys to think about, that it is a huge technique. And what I like to do in that situation is I make it sound like that party's going on. And then once I've established that, I start doing a little bit of a lost cow in between. And man, now those bulls are like, whoa, man.
Where you go, girl?
Hey,
girl.
Fruit.
Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah, most definitely. And I would say probably the other mistake, and I don't want to harp on this too much because I don't want guys that are just starting out to get too complicated, but you do need to understand what you're saying when you're calling and why you are saying it. I mean, if you have a bull that is sounding real timid, and because you've done a couple of cow calls and this bull sounded off, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, The bull sounded off, dude. Man, I've been practicing this, man. I've been practicing it since the end of last year to now. I've been listening to those podcasts, and you go up in there, wow! I mean, you give that big old screaming, loud, angry bugle at that guy, and man, it's like he just shuts up, right? Because that he's not in that mood. He's not in that state, and you just yeah, man, you just like the guy came in and he's kind of like, hey y'all, and you went over there, smack.
But for first timers though, Joe, I agree with what you're saying, but it can get very complex because it turns out there's really a lot of things that you can say if you really know elk language, right? But for first timers out there, I think if you really master your location bugle, something that is not extremely aggressive, and then just a good cow call, I think you can get started to where just, keep it simple and yet able to communicate and keep them engaged. I mean, I think with those two for starters is just a great foundation.
So here's what I'm going to tell you, Luis, and you should totally get this. You just mentioned the other day that you knew all the words to the Guns N' Roses song.
When didn't know what they meant.
And you had no clue what you were talking about, right?
Right.
Okay. But you could say those words, right? So what I tell guys to do is, it's good to have a location bugle. It's good to have a cow call. There is no perfect bugle. And what I tell guys to do is this: listen to elk talking, and when you hear a sound, you can do it on YouTube, anyplace else, try to just mimic that sound. Just mimic it. All right. You don't have to understand what that bull is saying, just like you singing that song. And what that does for you is the best way, if you're out in the woods, is if you want to make sure that you're not doing something out of line, you're not, if I walked up to you and you didn't speak English and I said to you, Luis, hey, bud, hi, what are you going to do?
Raise my hand and say, hey, hi.
Hi, right? Even if you have no clue. And we just had that, everything's copacetic and we move on, right? So that's the same thing. I think one of the best things you can do if you don't understand the language is learn to mimic the language. Just get so that you can make different sounds and copy the sounds that you're hearing. And if you're doing that, you are doing what your environment is doing. You're staying right there with that elk.
Yeah, the morning I killed that big bull, of course, we had a herd coming to us, and I got between him and several of his cows. But he was talking the whole time coming up. I mean, just bugling his head off. And as soon as I hit a little location bugle, he got insistent that, man, that ain't happening. Where'd you come from? Right. I thought I had all these cows to myself, and everything he did, I stepped on and just got him, just mimicked everything he did.
You put him in a lather, bro.
Man, dude, he was wore out when he come up that hill, brother. I mean, eyes bright as strawberries. I mean, he was 70 yards away from me, and I could see his body language was just livid, He came there urinating all over himself, and I mean, he was hot. So for me, the herd was coming and we knew it. So I didn't really need to do anything other than a few little, I guarantee if I'd have done that lost cow call, he'd lost his stuff and probably run me over.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it got him engaged to keep looking, see where I was at. And when he walked up there out in that opening, he was definitely looking to see where I was.
And I'll tell all y'all out there, man, look, ElkBros, we're coaches. And I believe that our goal is to make you the best hunter possible, to give you the best opportunity for success, to help you be the best athlete you can out there and have the best skill sets. So I'll tell you all the resources. And if you want to learn some of this language and just reproduce some of these, go out there and look up the Elk Nut and get the Elk Nut app. It is the best it is inexpensive, and it is one of the best things for you to have to actually learn. Paul Medell is incredible. I love Paul. Paul is just, I mean, he's cut of the same cloth. He's just a grinder, man, and he loves animals. He's passionate about it, and he's got a great little app out there, man, and you can learn from it. So,
again, it depends on personality, right? I really enjoyed Chris Rowe because I think he does a really good job. He graphs the pitches and he kind of explains and gets a little more in depth. And I love that stuff, but that's just me digging that type of stuff.
Right, and which is awesome. Chris Rowe is totally awesome. But the only thing I just don't want to do is for first-time guys is to go out there and then, it's just like I said, it's like, you go into a foreign country and all of a sudden somebody speaks something to you and you're like, oh, what did they say? What do I have to say? What do I do back?
Yeah, that's right.
It just becomes a little too much. Now, after a seasoned hunter and stuff like that, and you start learning some of that, you learn just those basics, like you said, that location bugle. You learn. You don't even have to learn how to do a chuckle. It's just, if you want to mimic one, awesome, it's great. You learn how to do a cow call, just a sweet mew. You learn how to, and the lost cow call is a good one to learn because it comes in handy. But I will just tell you that keep it simple. And always remember to always lean on the lover side more than the fighter side when in doubt, because that's always going to be a better way to go.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's just how it is, especially if you're not worried about what type of elk you're going to kill. If you're just trying to get an elk, then be a lover, man, because you're going to have cows come to you. If cows are coming to you, then bulls are going to come to you, and you're going to have people, and you're going to have other satellites in the wings. Okay,
no doubt.
All right. The next one the last one that we're going to get in our series is going to kind of conclude it, had to do with scouting, and the reason I bring that up is because all year long, especially on Instagram, you're going to see, especially early, you're going to see trail cam picture after trail cam picture of these big bulls and beautiful bulls, and they're in this area. And then a lot of guys, they're asking people where trying to locate the bulls in the summertime. They go out and they scout and they find those bulls in the summertime, and they think that those are the places to hunt because that's where the bulls are. And I'm not going to cover this too much because we're going to cover this in the EBD series, but I'm just going to tell y'all, we're going to cover that just a little bit more down when we get down here, is that's a huge mistake, because where those animals are in the summertime, where you're getting them on those cams in the summer, is not where they're going to be come September. It's not where they're going to be come October, November. All right. It's a totally, those elk move to different places for different times of the year, and there's reasons behind it. Okay. So it's awesome. And I'll tell you, I've had a little bit of success killing elk. I have never owned a trail cam in my life. I've never placed one out. Part of that is I couldn't afford it as well. I mean, it might have been cool to go out there and to get some pictures of animals, but I've never had one. So
a neat tool if you're using them for the right things. They're a neat tool.
Sure. Yeah.
I actually saw a funny post on Instagram today that said, "I'm not going to say an alien took all the elk away, but an alien took all the elk away. Where are they at?"
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and it sucks, man, when you think you're going into the right place where you've had these guys all summer long. You go in there and it's church mouse quiet, right? Another thing I think is, for especially guys coming out of state that do a lot of e-scouting, and they haven't put foot on the ground there, and it's okay, you don't have to. But the thing that I think is a big mistake is them not understanding how much bigger and how much steeper that country is than when they're online scouting.
Yeah, and you can see it now through Onyx if you use the topo part of it.
Really concentrate on the elevation curves for sure.
Yeah. Well, and you can actually do that because you can do it in Google Earth. You can do it in Onyx, where you can put things in 3D mode, right?
You bet.
All I tell guys is just understand that you're a speck on that map. And that country's going to get a lot bigger than you think it is. And, you know, you look at it and you go, well, there's no water in the area. That's not always the case either.
Sure.
There's a
There's
lot of things that can
springs you
happen
can't see.
that you can't see. And whatever you see in that 3D, add a little percentage of steepness to that, because you know the way those topo maps go, they kind of round things off just a little bit. All right.
Oh, believe me, how I know.
But I think that's just one is, and you can get there and it can almost become overwhelming because you're like, oh my God, you know, so just prepare yourself for that. And I'd say that the last thing that that when it comes to scouting is that when guys have found established roads and trails and stuff like that, that because they really don't know the country that good and they have looked online, they've got their online maps and they have their forest maps and stuff like that, they're not fearless enough. They really get so that they constrict themselves to those particular trails, because it's human nature, you know. You have those fears of getting lost or getting someplace that you don't know. Again, the country got bigger, it got steeper. Well, I'm telling you, make sure that you have Onyx on your phone, or if you use one of the other apps, there's some other, I think there's one called Base Hunt or Base Map out there.
Hunt
There's some
Stand, and
there's different ones out there. But as long as you can use them offline and they're accurate, and you can put down where your camp is, where your bike is, where your four-wheeler is, where your UTV is, whatever, and then that way you can go out there and get off the beaten path and be fearless out there, because and confident that you can get back. Always have a compass with you too, because if you start to lose battery, and you can also keep things so that, you know, you can recharge your phone if it starts to go out. Always put it in airplane mode. Get rid of stuff that you don't need. Turn off the Wi-Fi so it's not looking for it. All of that.
So that's an excellent point, Joe. I think a lot of people don't realize that you can put your phone in airplane mode and still that GPS function of the phone works on that phone. And also, especially with Onyx, you can pre-download the area which you're going to be hunting, so that way you still get the overlay of the actual satellite view. And then what the phone does is simply puts the dot where you're at and where you're going over that layer that is pre-saved on your phone. So by putting it on your airplane mode, you're not you're not going to disable the app. Right. And another thing I love to get into this stuff, when you're actually doing the e-scouting, you can help yourself with Google Earth and also with Google Maps, because sometimes the pictures, the satellite pictures, are not fully updated in all of them. So if you have the three, you can kind of look at a certain area and then say, okay, we'll just kind of look at, and another cool thing that I know Google Earth has is, and I don't know if Google Map has it now, is you can actually scroll back through satellite pictures in time to kind of see, understand maybe there's roads that are now hidden by trees that you can potentially identify, and make sure you got the markings that you need on the Onyx, and even paths that you're willing to travel or areas that you're willing to travel. Because if you do that on your computer and actually do it on your Onyx account, it automatically updates on your phone. And then it's all on your phone when you go out there, and right there at the touch of your finger.
Well, you're absolutely right, too, because in Google Maps, when you go into 3D and you use the fly feature, I love it, man. I start flying around through there. And what it does when it has that satellite, all of a sudden, these little benches start to really stick out on these certain sides. And you get a whole different feel for the country. Again, it's going to be a little steeper, a little deeper, and a little bigger, but it gives you a great feel for a lot of that and helps you to go, wow, I never, because if you go down that fly, you start to notice like, well, that ridge in front of me is blocking, but there's a great basin that nobody's going to see right behind it. They could be at the top of this ridge and they're not going to see it right behind it. So it's really... You're right. It's great tools. Use multiple tools when e-scouting to try to develop your plan, to develop your places, to get an idea, to start logging those in your mind or putting them down, like you said, on your Onyx so that you can go to those.
And mark them as you go too. As you're walking and you see landmarks and stuff like that, I like to every once in a while just take a stop for a second, make a mark, and just kind of give myself some idea and reference of where things are.
Well, it used to be hard because whenever you would mark a waypoint, all the waypoints looked the same. You had no idea what they were. Now in Onyx, man, you can put if it's a rub, if it's water, if it's feed, you can put all these different things
You can
down
change
that
the
give you a
colors
better
on the
picture.
pins too and everything.
Yeah.
So.
Exactly. So it's an incredible tool on there. If you guys don't have it, I'm insisting that you get it. All right.
Yeah.
Right out.
It's a need. It's not necessarily a want, right?
No.
I mean, it's a need. I think
Yeah.
it's necessary to have especially if you're going to do it yourself and do these DIY hunts and stuff like that.
Well, that's another way that the cell phone has really lightened up equipment. I mean, now you have your camera, you got an additional flashlight, you have a magnifier if you need it, you have your GPS, and a communication device. I mean,
compass.
Yeah, everything all together.
Everything.
All right. So let's head down to our EBD segment, guys. That concludes that. We're out on the
series. Part 3 is done.
Yeah. Now, does that mean that we won't be giving you more of stuff like that? Heck no. We're going to remember mistakes we've made along the way. And I was just listening to a podcast that we did, and I was like, oh man, yeah, that's another thing. So there's always stuff that we're going to come across, and we're going to pass them on to you. The first thing that I want to get into is I'm going to go right back to what we were talking about as far as the bulls and the trail cams. I call it the trail cam blues, where these guys are not finding bulls, in the rut where they find them in the summer. And just remember, when we're talking about our elk behavior database, is that bulls inherently are either going to be with other bulls or by themselves. 90% of the time, except for when they're young. When they're young, they're staying with the herd, they're staying with the cows and stuff like that up to a certain age. But once they become mature bulls, 90% of the time, they're going to be with other bulls or they're going to be by themselves. And that by themselves period is a short time as well. The boys like to run together, all right? And what happens is during the summertime when they're in their bachelor groups, and these bachelor groups, I went out and videotaped one last year, right in the spring, guys, had probably 20 bulls together in that bachelor group, not a single cow, all bulls. And the bulls and the cows are both doing something to prepare for two different things. Bulls have got to eat and eat and eat to prepare themselves to survive the rut. Because they have to get through the rut and then survive a winter. Cows are going to eat and eat and eat so that they can be healthy enough to have a healthy calf and survive the winter as well. And the cow elk are going to stick to the best feed all the time, whether it be down in the summer grounds or they start moving up to their fall areas, moving into their winter grounds. So bulls during the summer are going to feed on the best grasses they can, wherever they're happening on their moisture. Their summer range is going to be different. They can go up in those higher areas or they can go down in moist areas, and they can find those holes where they're comfortable being together. And that's when you're going to get them on all these trail cams in certain places. But as soon as it starts getting close to the rut, they start going to that transition. And where do they have to go? They're going to go where the cows are finding the best feed in September. And it's generally going to be the same area year after year. Now, can that change?
Sure.
Yeah, I think a lot of guys in Colorado found out this year because there was a lot of moisture.
Yep.
And it kind of
Spread 'em
depends
out.
on how wet the year is, right? Or how dry the year is. If you
Also,
got
if you've had a burn in the area,
oh,
can change it a lot.
most definitely. Definitely a burn. And I tell you what, those 3 and 4 year old burns are
Mhm.
awesome. Now, if it's a quick new burn,
Yep.
then that's going to pull them in there within weeks. If it just went over top of stuff, because it's going to green everything up. But
Joe, you remember a couple years ago we hunted that fresh burn, and I mean there were elk in it immediately. And it ain't been 6 weeks since y'all had the burn. Maybe less than that.
we went and spotted bull elk in that burn 2 weeks after it was through.
Yeah.
And they were already finding, because we had good moisture after it
Mhm.
burned, and so we had grass sprouting, and they were finding that new fresh grass that was coming up.
Where you killed your elk this year, this last year,
Right.
was in a burn area too.
Correct. And the
Oh,
year
yeah.
before.
Yeah.
And the year before.
Yeah.
And if you have small burns are better than large burns. Large burns are generally hotter and they take a long time to recover over top of that. And those edges of those burns are really super, man, because that's where it started to go out as it burned on those edges, and it gets a little bit thinner and you get some real green on there, and the animals have cover and then they have feed. So those are some really good areas. But remember that bulls will rut in the same rut staging areas year after year. And a lot of people think that that's because that's where the bull wants to be, and it's not necessarily because it's where the bull wants to be.
Right.
Cows need nourishment. They're going to be at the best feed areas, and like Gilbert said, these critters are slaves to their bellies.
To their bellies, man. You bet.
Yep.
Just like us, we're all slaves to our bellies, man. At the end of the day, they got to eat it to survive. They have to do it. So as soon as you change your focus on not worrying about where the bulls are all the time and worry about where you're finding the sign for the cows being there, eating, using travel corridors to and from, feed and water, you're going to start having a lot more success being in the elk, right?
Right. And where elk are, where there is a snow line, they're going to follow that snow line as it melts off, because it's going to give you the best grass. That's why a lot of times a lot of those elk are really, really high in canyon country. It depends on that. They could be lower down in the canyon where they have some, and they'll end up moving up, or they're up in the high country and they end up moving down into those feed areas up in that, like I said, following the snow line until they got to move out. It's always interesting to compare different types of terrain from like Arizona to New Mexico to Colorado to Wyoming, because they give different features in that. But that's where they're going to be, where the grass is best right away, okay, in their summer grounds. And then they're going to start moving to that fall area. Okay.
Joe, how do you, so there's that, right? There's the topography, the water, the food and all that stuff,
Right.
but there's also the sign, right? So,
Sure.
and so how do you put it together, right? I mean, obviously you gotta have the two. You gotta have the sign, you have got the rubs, you gotta have the droppings, you have, shows signs of bedding, and then at the same time, the nearby areas with food and water and stuff like that. I mean, just how do you put all that together?
So, really, a lot of it happens. Now it's by instinct, but if I was just starting out and I was to try to figure where they're going to be, let's say in September, is going to be different from where they're going to be in late October, because as they're going to be as high as possible, where it's green as possible. And as snows start to happen, they've got to move down, and they've got to get where the snow is thinner, and they got to get on snow-blown hills. So these are things that you have to remember.
Me, Luis, for me, it's about finding droppings and smell. If I can smell them and there's droppings there that are fresh, I know I'm with them, right? I mean, and if I can smell them, man, I can turn into that wind, and I know they're there. I feel much better about what I got going on. And when you're around bulls that are rubbing, no doubt fresh rubs, just the bulls have been in that area. But man, when you see fresh cow sign, where there's a lot of droppings and you smell them, man, that's a whole different ball game. That lets me know I'm where I need to be.
Luis, if I was to answer that, I would say during the summer, I would not ever be concerned where the bulls are. I would go find the cows. I would find where the cow elk are, and they're in those grounds. And because wherever they are is where the bulls are going to be.
No doubt.
All right. And the other thing I want to do is when I find those cows, I want to look around that area, and I want to, if I'm scouting on the ground, I'm not worried necessarily about just looking and saying, oh, the cows are in this area, because as soon as the rut starts happening and animals get split off, they're going to get pushed all over the place. What I'm looking for is in the area where I'm finding the cows, I'm looking for rut staging areas. I'm looking for places where there's rubs from the previous year. And remember, guys, not all rubs are equal. Okay. When you find old rubs that are up on the side in dark timber, there's 15, 20, 30 rubs around this bedding area up in the dark timber. Those are pre-rut rubs. Those are bulls rubbing velvet off their horns. They're getting their neck ready. They're starting to do things with each other, horsing around. Okay. When you see those big rubs, those thick, tall rubs on trees in the forested slopes and that dark timber on those hillside benches, those are from bulls rubbing their velvet. Now, remember where that location is, because if you're hunting an early August hunt,
Right.
you can peg those bulls there, right? Because those bulls they're still in a habit of where they want to bed, where they're eating, where they're drinking, because they don't have anything taking them off of that. They feel secure in that.
Mm-hmm.
But the type of rubs that I'm looking for is I'm looking for blown up saplings, those 3 to 7 foot saplings, those juniper trees, those jack pines that are friggin' just tore up halfway down. They're raked. They're on the edges of meadows.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They're on the edges of meadows. They're in transition areas from bedding to meadows, those corridors like that. When I find those saplings that are kind of like one here, another one down the way there, another one leading because they're traveling, now I'm in a rut staging area, because this bull is a bull that's been displaying for cows. This is a bull that is in those areas where, he's pissed off when he's hearing other bulls, and he just goes and blows up a tree in there. So that's the best way I could tell you as far as that is. You find those travel corridors, you find that rut sign from them bulls with cows, or bulls trying to attract cows during the rut the previous year, because it's a good chance they're going to be back in those type areas.
That's really good stuff. And I think, what you're saying makes extreme sense with regards to when, I think, the time of the year and their cycle of, during the rut and the after the rut, changes their locations and the signs that you need to use in order to kind of find yourself in the best position. I think that answered a lot of the questions I had in my mind for sure.
Well, if I'm a rifle hunter and I'm hunting in late October and November, I've got a totally different thing on my mind, because now I'm trying to find those areas that have got all, like Gilbert talked about, all those old droppings on those hillsides and in those bottoms from where they have just winter fed year after year, going to those best grass areas. You're looking for those southern slopes that are blown off. You're looking for those grass bottoms with those canyons that kind of feed off of that in the bottom, where they can be a little secluded inside there once they start feeding back again in their bachelor groups, because there is a period, y'all, and there's a lot of hunts that are in this period when it is the toughest time to get a good bull. And that's that post rut, after those bulls split off. Those big bulls split off. Now you can get a satellite that's still with the herd, and they're still sounding off sometimes until November, December. But those big bulls, if that's what you're hunting, they're diving off in recovery mode, man. They're just going off in a hole, and they're just going to get in. If you want to find them, you find you a hole that you're going, God dang, I ain't going down in there, that has a bench down in it, and it has water within 400 to 800 yards. And you'll start locating those. If it is the deepest, nastiest spot that you don't want to go, there's a good chance there's a big bull in it, as long as he's got feed and he's got some water around there.
Good stuff,
Okay.
Joe.
Well,
Really
I think
good.
that's our EBD series tonight.
Fantastic information. I know, our listeners out there are all wanting to understand those three phases, pre rut and then post. I mean, those phases are huge for us, especially us bow hunters, in understanding where we need to be,
Right.
and where we need to put our boots on the ground. But I think more than anything, guys just got to understand that you use all your senses when you're doing your scouting. And man, I use mine. I think I use my nose more than anything, Joe.
Yep.
I've learned that, man, those critters put off incredible aroma, if I will.
Yeah.
And man, you just can't go wrong. They won't leave that aroma strong if they're not close by,
Right. And I'll tell you, to that, Gilbert, man, when you're doing that and you're going through areas, walk crosswind, not into the wind.
That's
and you're going to cover more scent ground that way.
No doubt.
And it's hard to actually use the smell, the sense of smell when you're behind Joe after he's eaten Manano's meal.
Oh my
Had
Lord.
to throw that one in there, Joe.
That's
pretty bad.
Boys.
Close us out, Gilbert, before he gets going.
Guys, if you like what we're doing, please subscribe, rate, and review. Please do that. You have to go to Apple Podcast or iTunes to review us. You can check out more elk hunting content at ElkBros.com. If you want your question, aired on our show, please send a question to info@ElkBros.com. That's
most definitely
at ElkBros.com. What a show this week. And as I say every week, husbands, kiss your wives. Wives, kiss your husbands. Hug your babies and keep your broadhead sharp and your powder dry. And we'll see you next week right here on Blue Collar Elk Hunting.
Peace.
Thank you.